Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 75th Annual Hunger Games. It's a quarter quell, whatever that meant. Good day, folks. It is the Two Maesters here. And today, you guessed it, we're going to be talking about the Hunger Games. Oh, yeah. Now, we've been doing a couple of episodes on teenage dreams and stuff like that. As you know, we did the Twilight one, so now it's time for Hunger Games. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And I think just talking about the Hunger Games, it kind of reminds me like the Euros are on. And like potentially like the way you have the districts in the Hunger Games, imagine if that's what the Euros was. Like literally you have like a team of 11 and they have to battle each other out and that's how you then decided who won the European competition, Hunger Games style instead of a game of football.
Yeah, true. And speaking of we got to talk about the football. The funny thing I saw is, you know how it was Italy versus Albania?
Yeah.
Did you see that video of the Albanian fans going up to some Italians who are all just sitting at a pub drinking? They just whip out a thing of spaghetti and snap it in half in front of them. I mean, it was such like good-natured fandom and competition, which I thought was so sweet. You know, they can't start a fight over that. Even Italians were playing along, like getting down on their knees, like no. But yeah, that's what a good-natured sport's like. The Hunger Games is a very dark kind of sport. So let's start off with a bit of a synopsis, as we always do. Good old Wikipedia here. So, The Hunger Games is a series of young adult dystopian novels written by American author Suzanne Collins. The series consists of a trilogy that follows teenage protagonist Katniss Everdeen with a prequel set 64 years before the original series, which is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The Hunger Games universe is a dystopia set in Panem, a North American country consisting of the wealthy capital and 13 districts in varying states of poverty. Every year, children from the first 12 districts are selected via lottery to participate in a compulsory televised battle royale deathmatch called the Hunger Games. Aided by nuclear weaponry, the last district instead successfully rebelled against the capital and moved underground following a secret peace treaty. Well, that's a bit weird. That last sentence is really out of joint with the rest of the paragraph there. But yeah, that sums it up. Is there anything else you'd want to add to that?
No, I think that's a good summary to it, yeah, definitely.
I think an interesting thing that's a bit left field, but kind of, I feel like society went through a craze of loving battle royale things over the past, I don't know, maybe pre-COVID for about 5 years, because you had Battle Royale, the original Battle Royale, the Japanese, was it a movie, I think? I've seen it once a long time ago. Then you have Fortnite, then you have PUBG, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, even like the Call of Duty games are doing it.
Introduced it as well, yeah.
I feel like it's kind of been pounded in this Battle Royale thing, so it's not faded out, but people aren't super crazy about it anymore. But why is it that just suddenly over the past 5 years, I know the Hunger Games did come out we're looking at the movies, movies about mid-2010s, roughly. So it kind of ties in a little bit. Do you think there's anything about that?
I think maybe just, I think it's hard to put your finger on it, because then you kind of you've got that, and I think maybe linking something I know that we'll discuss later, like maybe just the reality TV age that really hit off in the early 2000s, and the fact that with a Battle Royale, it's kind of like anything can happen. And I think that's what people started to love about reality TV when it started off, whether it was like Big Brother or Pop Idol or the other different reality TV shows that started off in the early 2000s, was that this is actual, well, technically reality, so we're not sure what are the reactions going to be like, how are people going to act in a specific way. This isn't really as scripted, and I think the reason why people love battle royales is that so many different things can happen because there's so many different variables.
Yeah, exactly, and it's kind of one of the inspirations for the Hunger Games in the first place, this idea of the Colosseum, the blood and bred as entertainment. You've got these blood and games. I think in the human psyche, we really want to see that actually happen in real life. Obviously, we don't want to be in a society that supports that because we're very, we live in a state of relative peace and comfort. But I think if society does go south and there's a big nuclear war, there'll definitely be Hunger Games or something along those lines.
And even your point, like Battle Royale, you can kind of say like tournament competition is kind of Battle Royale to a degree.
Oh, yeah.
That it's kind of like you have, a group stage to settle out to say who are the best of those teams that have qualified. Mm-hmm. And now we have a knockout competition, so therefore it's kind of like winners stay on. So it's not like they're not all playing at the same time, but it's still a battle royale in the sense that the team will continue until they get to the final. And it's win and stay in. If you lose, you then go home. And then the passion behind it, whether if it's like for basketball or for football, American football, rugby, cricket, for any form of the different sports. And then even potentially you have Eurovision, which was, I think, last month. That was kind of like, you could kind of see it's like a musical battle royale where you've got 30 or something, and actually no, 50 or something countries coming together to then battle out and say who is the best overall.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of simulate. It's weird. It's like, why do people love football and stuff like this so much? National competitions, even Eurovision, because it simulates battle in a way that means no one actually gets hurt. So unfortunately, there's fans who go a bit crazy with it, and more than breaking spaghetti in front of Italian fans. But so I think that's kind of brings us nicely to like Suzanne Collins' inspiration for the Hunger Games. So you have like the classical inspiration. So you got the Roman Colosseum, the blood as entertainment for the masses, which I generally think one day, I think in our lifetime, we'll see like Hunger Games style stuff. I know we've got gladiators now, but
I think what people said the closest thing we do have is mixed martial arts in the UFC.
Yeah, that's true.
People said like if you're in the front row of the UFC, especially, and even boxing as well, that people actually get splashed and sprayed with blood.
Give me more.
And the fact that the rise of the UFC in like a pretty short space of time, I think they celebrated like maybe last year or 2 years ago, 30 years. And it's now one of the biggest sports in the United States because of the brutality, because of the violence. And I think there's just an aspect of us that actually wants to see that. I think that's why the Hunger Games does so well.
Yeah, I think so. And it's weird because we're like breaking through the fourth wall here because you have the audience in the Hunger Games movies and books, so people of Panem, and then you have us actually watching it, the actual audience. And I think that's why I like the Hunger Games, because there's something cool about the Battle Royale. Maybe it's something in the human psyche. So another bit of inspiration that Suzanne Collins got for writing it is Greek mythology, Theseus and the Minotaur. So as a punishment for past crimes, Minos, who was the king of Crete, forces Athens to, I didn't know Athens was a person, to sacrifice 7 youths and 7 maidens to the Minotaur, which kills them in a vast labyrinth. So they're all running away.
Oh, I think, no, the city of Athens.
Oh, yeah, maybe. That makes sense. Yeah, okay. I was about to say.
And I think that's another aspect you do actually see in Hunger Games, that it's also a way of keeping the
people in line.
And also keeping them at each other's throats, because it's like, we're not going to kill them. The other districts are going to kill them. So then if you then see, for example, someone who's from your district, whether it's district 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 12, and then you see that someone from another district has then killed the people from your group, you are then directed to hate that specific district, not the system, which is actually a very clever ploy.
Turn people against each other, divide and rule.
Well, we didn't tell them who to kill. They chose to kill that person.
Yeah, it's the divide and rule.
Yeah.
And there's actually, I know you haven't seen the Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, but they actually ask in it, the young Coriolanus know, what is the purpose of the Hunger Games? And on the surface, it looks like to keep the districts in line, or remind everyone, including the capital, of the rebellion and how much suffering it caused. But what the message that comes out at the end is to remind us of our own human nature and how so easily we could turn against one another when our survival is what we consider the most important thing. Yeah. So it's cool. I definitely could say give a Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes a watch. It's kind of cool. And of course the Jon Snow, the Coriolanus Snow, and it's obviously hot. So what have you seen or read of the Hunger Games? Like,
So I've read the 3 books and also seen the 3 films.
Ah, nice. 3 films? 4 films?
Yes.
Don't give out the part 1 and 2.
It's the thing that they do that kind of like gets on my nerves. Is like
with Harry Potter, yeah.
Harry Potter, they did it for Twilight, they did it for The Hobbit. The Hobbit was the worst. It was like one book split up into 3 films. So then you're like, oh, there's 7 Harry Potter films. Like, no, there's 8. What do you mean there's 8? There's only 7 books. Then you're like, oh yeah, they split the last one into 2. And it kind of feels like that's something that they are now always wanting to do, maybe because they want to get extra money, or they realize that it's the end, so they can give it an actual dramatic ending. Let's split the last book into 2 so we can actually give the characters like a fond farewell.
I don't think so. I don't mind it so much. I mean, all of these ones that they've done it with have either been disappointing or I've not been that interested. Yeah. But when Warhammer makes it big and they finally like make the books into movies, I wouldn't mind them splitting it into 2 bits. So, because the thing with a movie is you can only put so much in. Whilst TV shows, you have more love and affection, more time, you can flesh out all the details. So in terms of my interaction in that series, I'm such a noob. I've just seen the movies, but I have seen all the movies though, and I did rewatch them recently, so my memory's a little fresh, but we'll see. In terms of what your favourite one was, what would you say?
For me, I would have to say, book-wise and film-wise, it'd have to be the first one.
The first one, okay.
And I think just because it was like a brand new concept, because then you then kind of like get the kind of small backstory into the world, and then you then get to see like, this is barbaric, this is awful, like what is actually going on. Mm-hmm. And then especially when like Katniss goes, and I think Peter as well, are then not Peter, who does she go with again?
Gale?
Gale, yes.
Yeah.
When the fact that they both triangle. Don't really like each other, but then have to be, I think just the pageantry of it all was the thing that really hit me in the first like book, and also seeing it in the film, was the fact that it wasn't like, with Gladiators where it was like, okay, dress them up, put them in armor. It's like, no, you must come to a dinner, a pageantry, we take pictures and then you have to kind of like get sponsored by people, and if you then show off your skills enough, you get sponsored and you can then get more money when you go into the Hunger Games. And then you're like, damn, like this isn't just, we're going to put you in a environment and then you kill each other. This is, we're going to get the audience involved and invested in your stories, and then we're going to put you in a situation where you'll kill each other. So it's like perfect. They're marketing it. They're marketing basically bloodshed and mayhem. And I think that's why I really liked the books and the first book and the films, because it was like such shock factor straight away that really you would think if something's like a battle royale, it's like, okay, give them some armor, kind of like in the 3rd, 4th Thor film, when Thor gets thrown in with the Hulk, that type of thing. But it's like, no, we need to actually make the audience like them. We have to have them like have a pageant, have a dinner. And then you then think to yourself, like, how barbaric that is in and of itself. Like, let's put them on TV just before we send them off to die.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's, I think, one of the things that makes the Hunger Games very unique is it almost breaks the fourth wall with its voyeurism. Yeah. You have, who is that host that's played by, what's his name? I've got a list of characters here. Caesar Flickerman, the guy who hosts all the reality TV shows around the Hunger Games. He's all styled up and he's like cracking wise to the audience and stuff like that. But it's like, dude, they're literally sending kids to die. Yeah, and some of them are actually properly kids, like not like 18-year-olds, but like 12-year-olds. I think that's the youngest that can go. So it's that weird, interesting, almost satirical element. Because again, going back to the sources of Suzanne Hill, so she had the contemporary sources that she listed. Suzanne Collins, not Suzanne Hill. I don't know who that is. Reality TV. So she said one day she was flicking through TV shows one night and just came across so many reality shows, and then suddenly one show she flicked to was just vivid images of the Iraq War, just people dying. And I guess you get that with this show, that you have Caesar Flickerman and his audience all bright and colourful, but then you also have this horrible barbaricness of watching a nation watching children maul each other to death. It's quite stark and interesting. It makes you wonder if will our society go that way? Thank God not at the moment, but I feel it will.
But then also we then think about like, it's because mindsets have changed. Like if you gave the Romans the tech of nowadays, what would the gladiatory fights look like?
Well, bloody hell. I don't know, actually. I guess guns kind of ruin everything, so it'd be over too quickly. But, you know, that's the thing. Voyeurism there's a key message here about voyeurism, and I remember hearing about it in school, and I was like, I should probably look up the exact definition. Voyeurism is the enjoyment of seeing others in pain. Also, it can mean sexual arousal at seeing others in pain, but in this instance, we're definitely not talking about that.
But then it's like something that people always say is like, it's like some of the most watched videos online are like car crashes, or when a tornado strikes, or when like even like disaster films. Like if you think about it, Titanic was one of the highest grossing films of all time, and that's a disaster film. And basically the audience are basically just watching people in pain, watching people die. Yeah. And even like the whole genre of like the whole like Final Destination films that I think they made like 4 or 5 of them, that you would literally watch other people die gruesome deaths. And I think it's just like something within us that we watch, like even if there's a car crash or people just arguing, or there's a fight, we all just gather around and just watch it, and then we rarely ever intervene.
I know. I think a part of it is an escapism thing, because even though watching 2 children literally mauling each other to death is horrible, there's a way that it takes you out of you watching something like that, or just normal reality TV. Love is Blind, Sex on the Beach, Homes Under the Hammer, Come Dine With Me. It takes you out of your own. You're busy looking at people, and from watching them, you develop opinions about them, and you start getting involved, and you're just forgetting about your own troubles and your own circumstances. It's weird, because I used to think stupid-ass people watch reality TV, but for my years of just hanging out with different people, I realize everyone watches reality TV, even smart people, because it's not about watching something dumb. It's about having a disassociation from real life and just getting lost in it's ironic, in the reality TV. It's called reality TV, but it's actually for you to escape from your reality.
And I think that's why stuff like The Office, the UK and American one, then you also have like Parks and Recreation, which did the same model, and then currently doing the model now, which is Abbott Elementary, which is another successful show. They all did well and were amazing shows, because they had that reality element. I think we kind of like, is it that we want to envision ourselves within these characters, or do we think to ourselves that, oh, look at the way this person's acting, and then we start to then try and analyze the way that this person is, and we then start to think like we're let's say the scientists, and this is the experiment, and trying to then think to ourselves, oh, so this is why they're acting like this because of this. And then we then see, for example, with like Big Brother, people who are then pretending to be people who they weren't, and then backstabbing each other. And then the fact
we love it for some reason.
Which is true. We do love it, and we'd love to watch it. And is it because that it is basically, we believe that reality TV is human nature, and we're just seeing other human beings being their true selves, and that gives us a form of enjoyment. Yeah. Because we can relate it and say, oh, I've got someone like that at my office, or I've got someone like that in my friendship group, or someone like that is someone I've just met on the bus that we got in a real argument with. So is it that we then also see potentially
parts of our life? Yeah, I guess so. But somehow it feels like there's a separation of it. Because like sometimes when I'm feeling anxious or depressed, like if I see something in a movie that reminds me of something about my own personal circumstances, I can find that quite triggering. So I guess that's the thing about science fiction, fantasy. It's like very strong sense of escapism. So I'm not going to see anything that's relatable to me. But then it's weird because reality TV, in theory, you should see something that's relatable. But for some reason, it just feels great having that separation, because I guess you can watch other people make mistakes rather than
you actually
yourself
experiencing it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the setting and sort of style of the show. So I know we've got Panem, we have the capital, we have the districts. What do you think of the style choices of people from the capital in it?
Funny enough, like I read Hunger Games book before I actually played Fallout, but it kind of has It kind of has that vibe that it's like they've picked a time period within the United States, and that's kind of like the setting. So you kind of see that with like the makeup that people, especially the elite in the Capitol, the way that they wear it as well.
Yeah.
The way that the TV production for the actual Hunger Games take place as well. And I think one of the things it did kind of remind me of was kind of like a bit like the way that you have the districts. It kind of reminded me a bit of Maze Runner, which I kind of like watched like maybe
I haven't seen
a
it.
year or two after, which was kind of very similar. But it's like children which are put in like a maze and then must survive. And then the maze opens up, and then, for example, like animals can come in, poison can come in, and then it's then them like a social experiment, them adapting to what then comes into the maze. Maybe we can do an episode on that later. And you kind of see that with the actual districts, that each district has like a specific speciality.
Yeah, they do.
And another thing that always gets my mind into, like, when you have like dystopian worlds where it's like an apocalypse has taken place and the world is trying to recover, is like, what does the rest of the world look like? Is this the same situation for everybody, or is it that this is just one small section and that there are other elements across the board? Yeah,
it's difficult because you really want to hear what happens in Europe or like Australia or something, but sometimes I think it's good if writers deliberately leave things unexplained. Like in Warhammer, it's got a way bigger, more in-depth universe, but there's still things that are deliberately left unexplained because it leaves room for the fans to put their imagination and fill Reddit up with stuff. Picking up on what you said about the districts having their specialities, one funny scene is in Catching Fire when, can't remember her name, is it Joanna? One of the tributes, like, goes into the lift and is completely butt naked. She's like, wow, good thing you guys had fire, because as your district's thing, because ours is wood, so look what I'm... And she's just got this, like... She was like, wow, lumber, how fun, great. And then she gets completely butt naked. A random bit of trivia about that scene as well is that Joanna stated that her stripping scene was filmed... the actor Jenna Malone stated that her stripping scene was filmed in a real hotel glass elevator that was not closed for production. And guests could see inside of it. No. Even though her nudity wasn't shown on screen, because obviously it's, I think, a 12A, she did strip naked in front of Woody Harrelson, Josh Hutcherson, who plays Gale, and Jennifer Lawrence, who plays Katniss, during filming. Although she was surprised the scene wasn't shot in a studio or soundstage, she went with the flow and just went with it. Then the moment she was nude, the doors opened to reveal a hotel employee carrying a coffee cup holder. He's shocked to see her standing there naked. Malone tried to stay in character, but she just started laughing, and so did everyone else. That was pretty crazy. I mean, how come they just couldn't... There must be a studio that had a glass elevator, but crazy, huh?
Or really. Just book the hotel out and say...
Yeah. Can we just film at like 3 a.m. when no one's there? Like, it's... But yeah, I mean... It's cool how they have their specialities. So District 12 is mining, was it?
Yeah. Because I think did her father die in a mine?
I think so.
Yeah. I believe so.
I think they're miners, yeah. But then, so you know, I've got some districts that are more loyal to the capital. So I assume.
So I think District 2, I believe, is one of the loyal ones. And
what's their speciality?
I think some of them is weaponry. I know some make weaponry, some are tailors with clothes, some is agriculture and farming.
Yeah.
And I think is also another way of like controlling them, the fact that they then provide these resources to the capital and therefore they have only one form of like speciality. So therefore they would all have to then combine together to then take out the capital. They couldn't just... and the fact that some are then are more loved and seen more favourably by the capital than others, then also, as we said, adds in further dissension. Because if you're just into mining, okay, but you still need food, so therefore food would then have to be then brought in from the capital. Or if you've got food, you then also need a form of water, you need a form of like energy, which you then probably get from District 12 through mining.
And that's the way the capital and Coriolanus Snow's regime argues the necessity of the capital is that without us, you won't have basically the project manager, the spider that weaves the web and pulls all the resources together and shares them out, so it makes them more reliant. I guess touching on the capital again, just their style in it, because it felt like pre-revolution France, in the 1700s. There was elements of that crossed with a bit more modern styles as well. So if you look at, what was the name of the manager that was assigned, not Hamish, who was played by Woody Harrelson, but the woman that was assigned to them.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name, but her style looked like Marie Antoinette, like hands down. The image, what you get from that is the idea of this disconnected, disassociated upper class that's so far beyond reality, and the way they dress as well, the abundance of colour, it's so disconnected from reality. And I didn't really like the style choice at first, but rewatching all the movies recently, I'm like, okay, I get it now. This is actually makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
You could see the style choice there.
And I think also like that point in time was like the most like flamboyantly dressed Western European setting, that clothing and fashion. Because if you think about it, the 1700s were the ones with like the frills, the huge wigs. If you look at any time before that,
cake.
Yeah. And the fact that I think that was the most flamboyant when it came to fashion, because then if you look at the 1800s, it's kind of heading towards like more modern fashion, and like the 1600s is more like a bit of that, but more like less. But I think when like the 1700s was coming in, and then you had like the colonies were bringing stuff like sugar and tobacco, silk. So you then have an excess of like, that's why they also had like a lot of rotten teeth, was because now sugar was being brought in. They were just eating it and having it lavishly.
It's a drug in a way as well.
Yeah, and the fact that they picked like the point in time of like in Western Europe where you could kind of say the gap was almost at its biggest between the rich and the poor.
I guess so. I feel like 1700s or 1800s maybe. It's really hard to say. We need an economist in there. Me and you aren't versed in this. We just know from hours on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the area of Panem, it's not really explained what caused the devastation, why the United States is now this new section. I had a look on like a Hunger Games Wikia page, which is like Wikipedia, fan-made, or like, it's made by an audience and then it's moderated by people, but it says Panem is a post-apocalyptic North America that was devastated by nuclear wars and climate change, leading to severe droughts, storms, fires, and that made large parts of land uninhabitable. Due to a subsequent rise in sea levels, significant parts of its eastern and western coastlines have disappeared, causing a severe reduction in land. Since Washington was flooded, the country's administration had to be rebuilt elsewhere, and it is generally agreed that the current capital is the Rocky Mountains, roughly where the former area of Wyoming and Utah. District 12 town, where Katniss grew up, is in the Appalachian Mountains, possibly Kentucky or West Virginia.
Funnily enough, I think Jennifer Lawrence, I think she's from Kentucky.
Oh, is she? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's another reason why they picked her. And also just based on that location, like how many book series or even like teen dramas are based in that portion of the United States? Like
at all in any form of like
New
media.
York. Yeah.
New York, it's either the East Coast or it's the West Coast or it's like Florida, Texas is the main thing. But I think it's nice having somewhere else and having it focused somewhere else as well.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, you always got these, for example, Fallout they had to do in Washington, D.C., because there's something so shocking about seeing the most powerful countries in the world's capital in ruins. So I guess this makes it different in a way. Again, it's kind of hard to imagine where all this is because we're not American, but I can roughly get an image in my mind. But still, again, not much is explained. What caused the nuclear war, what's happened to the rest of the world. All seems a bit, especially all the talk about climate change, I find a little too too soon, especially what's going on in the news as well.
Yeah.
So let's go through movie by movie in sort of rough summary. So The Hunger Games, number 1, the novel came out in 2008, whilst the movie came out in 2012. So compared to Twilight, so remember Twilight, the book novel came out and it was published by accident almost. And then the movie came out maybe like 2 years later. So it's a quick turnaround. It seems like Hunger Games fairly quick, 4 years. I mean, there's books and stuff that have been out for ages and don't get like finally published into a TV show or movie after like 50 years. I think maybe like Lord of the Rings and stuff.
Because like the only one I really remember is like the animated one, but that was like years ago.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think the Soviet Union actually did one at one point as well, which is hilarious. Yeah, and even things like the Avengers, there was a really early version of the Avengers done. I can't remember. Some long time ago. Actually, I think one of the actors in this, I think the guy, Donald Sutherland, who plays President Coriolanus Snow, actually was in the original Avengers movie back in the day. I'm pretty sure I saw that pop up somewhere and I was like, what? There's an original Avengers movie? It's probably, I think I might have seen photos a couple of years ago, but that's definitely blown to the dusts of history. But I'd just like to say, whilst we're talking about Donald Sutherland, he always plays a good bad guy. Every science fiction movie, you see Donald Sutherland in it playing a good guy, you're like, he's going to be like the red herring, he's going to come out as a bad guy in it. Great actor. What do you think was the Rotten Tomatoes critic score for the first Hunger Games?
I think it would be high because like it's usually like with a book series that they turn into a film, and especially if it's like something that's different. So I would say maybe like 78, 79.
Oh, you usually give too much, but you're actually giving too little now. It's 84%. Yeah, it's unusual because, thinking of a lot of these teen drama movies made from books like Twilight usually aren't that great. Audience score, what do you think that was?
I think if that's like 84, maybe like 87, 88?
81%.
81.
Close enough, but, I'd say that's pretty fair. I think the first Hunger Games is really good. You can't see too many production differences between that Hunger Games and the later ones. If you remember Twilight, the first Twilight movie, the production value in it is so bad, it's so cheap looking.
Yeah. And I think the issue that you had with like, at least with the Hunger Games, I think the Hunger Games might have been done either by Warner Brothers or Universal, I think, did the Hunger Games. So then it's like a huge studio, but I think Twilight was like Lionsgate, and they were like a small studio that was then becoming bigger and bigger, and literally became a bigger studio through like Twilight and how much money they were able to get.
Right,
I think that's kind of like you had I think that's probably why like the actors thought it was like some form of like indie film because they're like, Lion who?
Yeah, Lion what? Yeah, fair enough. I guess like thinking of, we'll come back to that point now, I don't want to distract us. Then we have Catching Fire, which was a novel in 2009, which is, pretty soon. If the Hunger Games came out in 2008, she was banging out these novels, Suzanne Collins.
But one thing that I did read, that I forgot what the author's name, like some authors have this style that they literally plan out the whole book series. Mm-hmm. So they know, okay, it's going to go from here to here to here to here. And then they just write it completely. And then they release it, and then they release it in stages. So instead of like George R. R. Martin, which also we can maybe talk about later, that there's rumours that Winds of Winter is coming out sometime after the last episode of House of the Dragon.
Oh really? I mean,
that's been rumoured, and fans are like, could this be the year? But then there are authors who literally like have the whole plan for their book series, and they don't release any of their books until they like write all of them.
I think that could make sense because it's so easy to like, when you're like at work, if you're making a presentation, you put the titles in, then you go back and fill in the blanks as you go. So I guess it makes sense if an author has a general idea of where they want their plot to go, and then they don't share that with anyone, and then book by book they do it, and that's Like some things, like Star Wars, it's just so. Even the original trilogy, you could actually tell, going back watching it, that they didn't plan shit. They're just like, oh, this is making money. Let's make another one. Let's make him the father. Let's make her his sister, even though they kissed in episode 4. Like, ew, gross. Where were we? Got distracted. Planning along. So perhaps Suzanne Collins was doing that with novel after novel coming out. And the movie was in 2013. In reflection, I think Catching Fire is, what really pushed Hunger Games into the mainstream spotlight. I didn't watch the first Hunger Games until I saw Catching Fires in movies. They had like a big marketing campaign for that. Like I saw posters everywhere. Subway had like a special Subway salad.
Yeah, I did see that.
I think I was doing my my final exams at school, and like we'd go to Subway before an exam, me and my friends, and we'd have like special Hunger Games.
I think it was the same with like Star Wars. That it was a hit, but then it was like, I think they said they only released it in select studios, and it wasn't until they were about to then release Empire Strikes Back that it then blew up into what it is today. And I think it's probably the same thing with like, people liked Hunger Games and like, oh my days, this is a really good film. And then when they knew the second one was coming out, which if you said it came out in 2013, so like a year later, it's then like...
Christ, it was a year later actually.
And I think the weird thing for me is like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, there's like a bit of a gap. Actually no, Lord of the Rings was 3 years in a row. Yeah, it was 2001, 2002, 2003. But yeah, it's like for like Star Wars, they take like a bit of breaks, but it seems like if they've got the literature,
you're right. It was 3 years in a row,
And I think if they've got the literature, it's like they just speed through them as quick as possible. I think the only book series they don't is like Harry Potter, because the children have to grow older.
Yeah,
so like we can't really bang these out.
But in all fairness, though, it's 1 year. It's each film is like a different.
It's different school year.
Year 7, year 8, year. They could have probably done that, but I guess maybe. I don't know. Actually, maybe it's because they didn't want to interfere with the kids' like normal lives or something. Like they had to do exams, and because I remember even whilst they were filming Harry Potter, the kids actually had to quickly go off and do an exam.
Just thinking about like Twilight was. All 4 films were out within a space of 5 years. We talked about like Lord of the Rings was 3 years. Hunger Games is also really close. So was Maze Runner. And then you think to yourself that it kind of feels like maybe they kind of like signed a contract early and were like, you know what, this is big. We're going to sign a contract for the whole book series. But then you have like some films, like for example, the Chronicles of Narnia, they actually had to take a bit of a longer break. And I think the first one was 2005, I believe, and the next one was 2008.
Right, okay.
And I think it's just weird that did they then do some of like the filming of the second film, so Catching Fire, while doing the filming for the first film? Because you then think about that turnaround is pretty quick.
Yeah, especially in like films. I guess if you've got all the props and stuff, it makes sense. But you can see, like, for example, some things have changed. So like in Hunger Games 1, you see the peacekeepers and they're white, dressed and so on. But in Catching Fire, they've upgraded them a bit and they look a lot cooler, with like a proper faceplate on, and it's a bit more stylish. But they would have had to like make some really quick design changes in the space of a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you could get away with filming some scenes for Catching Fire, like as you wrap up for Hunger Games, but this must be quite intense. I guess this is why it's difficult for some actors and actresses, because they don't want to get caught in film series or TV series. It's hard to break out of that role afterwards because they've kind of turned down a lot of opportunities after what? There's 5 movies you've committed to 5 years of your... 5 years... Oh, sorry, only 3 years of your acting career to do it. Oh, that's interesting. But still, that, you might have lost opportunities there. But still, it was really cool. I think Catching Fire was my favourite one, just because it's not only Battle Royale, but it's Battle Royale of all the victors. It's the quarter quell, so it's kind of like badass. You've got the professionals. So when you do see MasterChef, the professionals, or like the Great British Bake Off, the professionals that actually exist. Like, this is the creme de la creme.
And I think it's also a clever move by the Capitol to be like, so now all the people that you celebrated for victors, and I think one thing that we've got to add is that if your champions win, you then, I think they win a prize, the district gets something from it as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so. I think that's why they also really want them to win, is so then they can also then bring pride and also maybe resources to then their specific district in winning. And then the fact that they're like, yeah, now we're going to take all the people that you celebrate in your districts and now we're just going to kill them all off again. I think that was a clever ploy, but I think it was, what you see later on in the film, just a step too far.
Yeah, and that's that ignites the revolution. Then you get introduced to some interesting characters. So the new game maker, Plutarch, who's played by Philip Seymour Hoffman in one of his last few roles, actually, because he unfortunately died, I think in the filming of just after the filming of the final Mockingjay part. He's actually secretly a rebel. He's a really cool character because he comes across as super slick. Even Coriolanus Snow trusts him. He's like, this man has a good hairstyle. I can trust him. He even tries to... Actually, I'm falling into the third movie there. Yeah, that's pretty cool. A funny scene I liked in this was, well, it's not fun. Well, it's not going to start. How I describe it's not going to start funny. You can see that Katniss, as well as the other victors, are traumatized or having PTSD from being in the games, including Peter. I love Peter in this because how you spell it is Peter. It's like Peter.
Oh, no, Gale.
Gale as well, which sounds like they're funny because it's a female name, to be honest.
True, actually.
We also need to talk about the love triangle in a minute. Mm-hmm. But, because obviously, you have this blossoming romance, or like this crush that Peter has on Katniss that comes to light in the first one.
Yep.
And it's awkward because there's Gale, who's Katniss's actual boyfriend. But, in this one he says, it's okay, you have to do what you do for a show, for the cameras.
And also remember the end.
Of the first one?
In the first one, didn't they switch it that only one of them should survive?
It should have been that only one of them should have survived. And then they were like, let's eat these poison berries together. And
that's... Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that in Coriolanus Snow approaches Katniss in the start of Catching Fire and says, what you did there, to some people it was seen as an act of love, but to me I could see it for what it was, an act of defiance. So I need you to play along to the cameras, and it's awkward.
And I think maybe that's what caused what happened in the second film when they were like, all the champions come back. Could have been like, you made me look the fool. Now you are going to suffer for it. Yeah,
Snow does say something about that. It's like the victors need to wipe them out as a species. And I was like, God, this guy doesn't know how science works. They're not a species. But yeah, and you do see that there's some of the other victors. So there's one guy, I think is it Quinn, who's like the sweetheart of the capital, and he deals in secrets. And when he first approaches Katniss, he goes up to her and is like, what secrets do you have? And you actually see him as like, oh, this is a bad guy. But he actually turns out to be a good guy, along with Joanna, who seems a bit psycho. She's also an interesting character because she survived her Hunger Games by playing weak, pretending that she was really weak and pathetic and hiding. And then they actually just killed all the last remaining people. Like, pretty cool.
And also, I think in the second film and also second books, is that when you find out like how Hamish survived his?
Actually, in the movies, it's not touched on that all.
Because I think in the second book, it's described that it might be the first book as well. But in the second book, he explains that how for his, what he did was that he just kept on walking and walked until he got to the boundary.
Really?
And then what he then did was to work out a trick that anything that hits off the boundary would then reflect and smack backwards. So in the final duel against I think maybe someone from District 2, he was fighting with them, and then what he did was he grabbed his axe, moved back, threw it against the barrier, it hit it, and then smacked the person in the head. So then that was his plan, and that's how he was able to survive, was that he went to find the edge, and therefore he was away from the whole battlefield, whole battle royale, and knew that at least if I'm at the edge, my back is safe. I just have to look forward. And then was just constantly practicing, like throwing objects against the barrier so that it bounces back, so he knows the exact angle. Because basically he hadn't had like any proper fighting experience. Yeah. So he just used maths and science and basically constantly experiments to see how things would bounce off the barrier and so react to it.
There's another one who's really smart. I can't remember his name, but this guy who survived by basically electrocuting everyone all at once by just... He's like the Capitol's tech lead or something. So going back to what we said, that Katniss and all the other Tribunes are traumatized from their time in their Hunger Games battle. So you see that with Hamish as well. He's an alcoholic. There's this great scene though when Katniss is having a nightmare. She wakes up and like Peter's at her door and's like, "Were you having a bad dream?" She was like, "Yes." He's like, "Me too." And he's like, starts to turn away and she's like, "Wait, Peter, come back." And then it's just like, I love the dynamics of this love triangle of Gale and Peter, that she needs Peter to comfort her with the Hunger Games and stuff, and for the cameras they've got to put on the show, but damn. And what is it with these bloody love... Is there a genre in movies and cinema called love triangles?
I think just not in like just cinema. You see it in so many different soap operas, whether it be like American ones or like EastEnders, Coronation
teenage
Street,
ones,
teenage shows as well. Yeah. And I think even like in like more adults, even you could potentially say that in Star Wars there is a triangle until you find out that
one's a sister.
And I think it's just like the cleverness of it all. We mentioned with Twilight is that you also had people who were like, some who were Team Peter, some who were Team Gale. And it's just like, why do we have that?
Are you Team Peter or Team Gale?
I would say Team Peter, just because like how can you go through that experience and be like, yeah, now I don't want to be around you or be with you. It's like they have something that's trauma that they have in common that her and Gale will never fully understand. And that will be a big part of her life for like the rest of her life. And like he will be like, and I think it could like bring frustrations in their relationship because he will never fully understand.
He'll never fulfill Katniss's need for a midnight cuddle after she has nightmares. Yeah, it's true. He should really blame the Hunger Games. He can't blame Katniss and Peter. It's the Hunger Games' fault. It's done it to him. Very true. Anything else on Catching Fire?
I think one of the things I did like, especially in the books, was the trauma. Like she's like shaking and panicking, like not again. And I think she kind of like goes like running to try and escape the problem, that I have to now go back in there again. And I think Hamish is like the one who kind of like tries to then comfort the both of them, because there's only 3 of them that are alive. Like some districts have more people who have survived over the years, but for District 12 there is only just 3 of them. And like Hamish then has to kind of like be like kind of like this paternal figure that he doesn't want to be. He understands that I'm the only ones that these 2 kids understand what they're going through. I'm the only one who understands it, and now I'm gonna have to go back into this shithole that caused him to be an alcoholic to then go through.
It is funny, you even see who's the manager? I keep forgetting her name. The one from the Capitol who looks like Marie Antoinette. Even she is starting to develop a bond with them, and they are also starting to bond with her. Like she even like cries a little and says, "It's just not fair that you have to go through this again." And it actually seems genuine. I see that. That's really cute, actually, seeing those boundaries breaking down between this member of the elite and these 2 peasants, essentially. It's quite cute. I guess one thing we haven't spoke about with the first Hunger Games movie and Catching Fire is, again, the style element. So the symbolism of Katniss, she's on fire. Like, it's so cool in Catching Fire when she actually catches fire with her special dress. Or in the first one when she does that twirl, does that thing with her dress. I also like when she puts the wings up as well with her stylist, who she's like such best pals with.
And there's also wasn't that whistle that she had as well that people kept on like copying and mimicking.
Do do do.
People would just do that all over the place, and I'd always see it like on social media at the time.
Yeah, oh man, I love the memes that are coming out of I Volunteer as tribute. Like some are so good. Like Scarlett Johansson has just divorced from Ryan Reynolds and is now looking for a new partner. It's like, I Volunteer as tribute. Do, 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 do. Yeah, it was cool. So let's go on to Mockingjay. Mm-hmm. So novel came out in 2010. Movie part 1 came out in 2014, and movie part 2 came out in 2015. Weirdly enough, what do you think the critics... the critics score for Catching Fire, what do you think that was?
I know that it was like better, maybe 85, 86?
90%.
90, yeah.
Audience score, 89%.
Oh.
So they actually really like Catching Fire. I found Catching Fire a little bit slow, but it's still my favourite one out of all of them, just because I like the idea of it. It's cool to see more information about the other participants in the Hunger Game, even if it wasn't that much. Like in the first Hunger Game movie, didn't really see much information. So also, I can't remember if it was in Catching Fire, the first movie, but you know Huey from The Boys, he was actually one of the participants. He was one of the other tribunes, but obviously it's his early days, so you don't really notice. And also a guy who plays Thad in Blue Mountain State, if you've seen that. I think which is quite funny.
Also, I think one of the last, I think the person from District 2, who's like, you know, the one who's getting mauled by those, and that's another thing we forgot to discuss, like, they also bring in like bugs and animals into it, because remember in the first film she gets like injected
the tracker,
and then she then starts to hallucinate. So it's like, it's not only that they're putting them in this environment where they're to kill each other. If they don't kill each other fast enough, they then bring in elements, hazards that can mess everything up. And I think I might be getting this wrong, but the person from the District 2 who's like dying and is being torn apart by the wolves, those hound things, and because he's got like indestructible armor, it's like taking forever for him to die. So Katniss just basically shoots him, so then he can actually die and not have to be torn to pieces to death.
No,
I think he might be, I might be getting this really, really wrong, might play, you know, Ragnar Lothbrok's oldest son.
Oh, right,
I think so, in the whole Viking series, I believe so.
Oh, right, maybe I'm getting that confused with the guy from Blue Mountain State. They do, for some reason, look really similar in my mind. Yeah, but this is a lot of aspiring young actors and actresses were in this, so... yeah, little things you notice. So, speaking of The Boys, season 4 is out now, and it's it's filthy, it's diabolical. But anyway, going back to this, the hazards are quite cool. You know, poison gas, tracker jackers, these weird bugs with this venom that makes you hallucinate. It's not fully explained, but I imagine some of these animals, because they don't look like animals from day, are like the result of radioactive fallout manipulating the DNA.
They're actually the Capitol actually conducts experiments and then puts them into the actual Hunger Games.
You're right. In the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, actually, you meet the game maker, and she's actually making some of the stuff. Like I think the Mockingjays, like how they record stuff and say stuff, she's actually making them in a lab. I totally forgot about that. Okay, so Mockingjay Part 1, 2014. What do you think the critics' score was?
I know it was kind of low, and I think... and like, even for me and Jeffrey as well, it was our least favourite book.
Oh, okay.
And I think, like, the main reason, it kind of felt as if it was, like, rushed.
Oh, okay.
Especially when you, like, found out the... Actually, we'll talk about this later, but, like, the major event that takes place within, like, the Mockingjay book was kind of like, oh, well, couldn't they have just... Because, like, doing that just changes everything really quickly, when it could have just been more of, like, a more well-written, like, way to finalise and end the book.
Yeah, because I guess there was no Hunger Games in it, in Mockingjay Part 1, as the movie, that... I assume the book was just the one book, wasn't it? Yeah. The movie felt, from my perspective, felt a little bit anticlimactic, although you did have that breakout where they rescued Peter and all the others, and then Peter has been mind manipulated to kill Katniss. But yeah, it did feel a little bit slow, but I actually quite liked it, because it was cool to see District 13 and how some weird society that wears all the same clothes, has very strict schedules, and then you have their own president who's very taciturn and very concise, not very inspiring, until Katniss comes along, and Plutarch as well, who makes suggestions of how she can make things a bit more exciting. I wish there was a bit more description about District 13 and how they, first of all, how they survived. I assume it's just because they went underground and could survive the bombings there.
I think also they were the district that developed nuclear weaponry.
Right.
So it's kind of like basically saying, well, we know how to make nukes and so do you, so we could, if you try and force us, we will just drop a nuke.
Destruction, yeah. Yeah, they actually do say that in a bombing that happens at the end of part 1. She says prime the missiles. She's like, she'll do it as a last resort to like, but again, it's like of using nukes today. It is a last resort, not to be actually used. Oh, okay, fair. Is there much more you could tell me about District 13 from the books? Do you remember, or?
So yeah, they were very much, I think it was very much more like strict. It's like there was very much like a hierarchical society where you did have the president and everyone else had a specific job. And in the books, you really did have a lot of conflict between Katniss and also the rebels from the other districts and the president of District 13. Of like, she wanted, because you know when you have two resistance groups, you also see it in like Star Wars as well.
Yeah.
That each person wants the resistance to be in their own image or to follow the plan
or the end plan.
Yeah,
what they
but
want.
the end game
yeah.
wants to be different from each other person. So you then do see kind of like the butting heads concerning that.
Yeah, I suppose, and I think you always see this awkwardness between Katniss and what's her name, President. I actually can't remember. She's got a very boring name. What's she got? President Coriolanus Snow versus President, I don't know, Cole or whatever. I can't remember her name. But yeah, and I love what happens in the second part with them. It seems like, obviously, you know, if they did one movie, it'd be quite hard to squeeze everything in. But I kind of like that they fleshed out, though. Maybe that's why they kind of struggled with the reviews, because I guess they had to space out so much. Things were a lot slower.
Yeah. Because it was very similar with the Hobbit. That for some reason, like the first Hobbit film got really low ratings, and I think it was because everyone remembers from the Hobbit film everything that happens in the second and third film.
Yeah,
like when they meet the trolls, or they remember like the introductions at the beginning, and then
Thomas
like
Bombadil and stuff. Yeah,
and then people like forget about the fact that their interaction with the trolls, and also the fact that they spend a lot of time of their journey. For example, they meet the Beastman as well, and I think the thing that everyone says is the highlight of the first Hobbit film is the dwarves coming into Bilbo's house and him being just like, what the F is going on? Like, this is my house. What are you doing
bunch.
here?
Yeah,
and I think this probably is very similar to what took place for like the last Hunger Games, or the third Hunger Games film, was that because it had been split and like everyone, like the major things are happening in the next film, it kind of feels a bit of a letdown, because it's like, I remember in Dead Man's Chest, Pirates of the Caribbean, the second film, when they ended on a cliffhanger, and it was like, Jack Sparrow had been eaten by the Kraken, and then they'd also brought back Jeffrey Rush's character, Captain Barbossa, back to life, and it was left on a cliffhanger. You kind of felt like, you were kind of let down, because you're like, it's brought up all this anticipation, and now it's like, now you need to wait for the new film to then come out.
Yeah, I know, and it's good to leave on a cliffhanger. Originally, actually, with Mockingjay Part 1, they were going to leave it on a cliffhanger of Peter strangling Katniss, but they decided not to for some reason. I remember seeing that in some trivia. I guess maybe it would have been too dark an element to leave it on or something.
Then you could argue that the book itself and even the elements in it is pretty dark to begin with.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Kids killing each other. Yeah, I can't remember the reason why they did that. I guess one thing that starts to come out more in this as well is the soundtrack as well. So you got some songs like The Hanging Tree, like When Will You Go to the Tree? Like, it's so cool, very dark. It's actually sung by Jennifer Lawrence as well, which is cool. And I think actually the score composed for Hunger Games is pretty cool. It's by a guy called James Newton Howard, who did The Sixth Sense, a bit of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and collaboration with the god Hans Zimmer, Peter Pan, Treasure Planet, Space Jam, which is quite funny. It's cool. I dig the soundtrack. It had a catchy, so maybe not like one that's recognizable, but compared to ones like Star Wars and
Pirates of the Caribbean or Harry Potter that stands out any time you hear it.
Yeah, exactly. I always remember the do 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 do. Also the hanging tree as well. I'd recognize that from a mile away. Like, it's cool. Maybe not as like super big and as memorable, but I'd recognize it. It's cool. What do you think the critics' score was for part 1 and part 2?
Let's see. 72 and maybe 65.
Too generous. They were both 69% for some reason. I had to double check that on Rotten Tomatoes, but yeah, they're both 69%, which is fair. It didn't decline at least. Whilst the audience score, 71% for part 1, 66% for part 2. So some people weren't too happy. I actually really like Mockingjay. I guess because I didn't read the book, but some of the dark stuff that happens, like Prim dying in it, and then one of the coolest bits is when, you know, after all this, the rebels are victorious, President Coriolanus Snow has been captured, and it comes to Katniss is tasked to execute President Snow, but then the president of District 13, or now the president of of Panem, says we will hold a Hunger Games with all the people of the capital, we'll use their children to fight. And then there's a big argument between those that want it to happen, who want revenge, you know, like Joanna wants it to happen because she's very pissed off all the time. And then people like Katniss who don't want it to happen because it's just traumatic. No one should go through it. You know, how can you have the moral argument if you do the same as the evil enemies?
And I think that's kind of like the whole thing you have with like revolutions in and of itself.
Oh yeah.
Like we mentioned the French Revolution, you had those who were like, well, we just want the monarchy to be deposed. Then you had those who were saying we just want the monarchy to understand our feelings and give us more power. And then you had those who were like, no, they must die.
Yeah.
The nobility must die. And unfortunately for potentially hundreds of thousands of people in France, it was the latter who were like, no, they all must die.
Yeah.
And it's also the fact that
violence pulls through.
And the fact that the person who invented the guillotine was also guillotined with his own invention.
That's ironic.
You then get to think that I found out, like my sister told me, that Madame Tussauds was established to basically keep record of those who had been killed in the French Revolution.
No, really?
Because they killed so many people, they were like, okay, so we need to then make wax heads of them to say, okay, then this is whom has been killed, that person's been killed, that person's been killed. And then you had like a whole period of everyone being in fear, people killing other people.
Yeah, the Terror was it called? Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what, I think maybe Katniss, probably not knowing the history, but kind of was like, if we continue on this path, the violence will just breed more violence. Sooner or later, the capital will then riot, and then they will then take revenge.
History repeats itself. Yeah, the cycle's got to stop somewhere. It's a really good TV show. It's also a movie, but Snowpiercer, have you seen the TV show?
No.
That's excellent up until season 3. But again, it's like a revolution that takes place, and once the people who are oppressed are on top, it's the person in charge is really struggling with his own comrades becoming evil or like wanting to get revenge. And unfortunately, that's what happens in revolutions. There's always a period of just mayhem and bloodshed that takes place. The Red Terror and the purges that happened in Russia, the terror that happened in France. It's nuts. And with all of that, you get Katniss is invited to be the one that executes Coriolanus. So again, a bit of for the audience, reality TV gets everyone in Panem to watch. She draws the bow and turns around at the last moment and shoots the president of District 13. And I thought that was a badass move. And then Coriolanus Snow just laughs. And then the audience, as Justice of the Mob, he gets pulled apart by the audience. And I thought that was really well done. I like that. I thought that was a cool way to end it.
I think in the books, I might be getting this wrong. I think what happens, because he's old, I'll have to double check this, that he just starts laughing. And then it's like, I can quickly check now, but like he has an uncontrolling laughing fit. And then that's how he dies.
What, because they would have spared him, but then people are like, fuck you, he's laughing at us.
No, I think it was
inappropriate.
Let me just double check, because I think that's how he dies in the books.
Who are you going to the tree? I'm actually singing it wrong as well. I was like, when are you going to the tree? Classic. One thing I'm known for is singing everything in the wrong lyrics.
Yes, I am right, yeah.
Go on.
He choked to death on his own blood.
Oh, nice. That's quite poetic, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think maybe they wanted to change it for the film, so then it would be like more justified. His death would be more justified, and actually kind of like people would have their own revenge.
Yeah, I guess so. It's kind of justice of the mob, but also giving the audience that feeling as well. Can I ask, what is the symbolism? Why does he love white roses? Does it say in the because I know in the movies of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, his grandma loves growing roses, and when he was younger, she would always give him a pin with a rose on it when he was in the academy as a student. But you don't see any white roses until later on. But I don't understand where he gets the white roses from. There's also in Mockingjay Part 1 towards the end. There's a blackout on the Capitol and they're going to go rescue Peter, and that's that lot. I think that guy Finicky or whatever his name is doing a promotional video where he's just talking, and like he's found out all these secrets about Snow, that he has these roses around him to mask the scent of
the fact that he's slowly decaying and dying.
Yeah, because he's been swallowing a lot of poison, but the antidotes as well, but it's still not working. So maybe that's kind of cool, but it's not really given prime attention there actually. When they show that scene,
they might give the film a sequel or even a TV series, and might maybe try and explain it in there.
I think so. Well, I know you haven't seen The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and the critics gave it 63%, the audience 89%. I actually say that's more fair on the audience side. I liked it. I think they could have done more of it, but it was cool. The novel for it came out in 2020, which, as you know, was a great year.
Yep.
And then the movie came out in 2023, so they took a bit of time to actually make that into a movie, but it's set 64 years before Katniss and her time at that Hunger Games she went to, and follows the rise of Coriolanus Snow and his relationship with like a tribune called Lucy Great-Baird, who's like a country singer from District 12 who actually does some really cool songs in it. And it's sort of alluded to that she coined the Hanging Tree song and stuff. And you sort of might see why Coriolanus Snow is the way he is. So one quote he says to Katniss in, I think, Catching Fire, maybe the first movie, I'm not sure, he says, "It's love that will tear you apart. It's love that will kill you." And in this, he's the manager, like the Hamish for this Lucy Great-Baird, and he manages to help her survive that Hunger Games she was involved in. He basically cheats to basically get her to survive. Okay. For that, he gets banished to District 12 to become a peacekeeper. But he's basically in love with her, and she's initially in love with him, but then she eventually betrays him and just runs off. Without really explaining why, but I think it's because he still has strong attachments and positive feelings towards the capital, whilst she is literally of District 12, so she's going to hate that.
Maybe that's kind of like why he gets his hate for District 12 as well.
Which is cool. I thought it was cool. You could see he's just a bitter old man because his love betrayed him and stuff, and that's why he hates District 12. There's even a reference that they pick him and this Lucy Great-Baird are just chilling, being romantic in nature, and she's picking a plant. She goes, "See this plant here? This plant is Katniss." And I was like, oh lord, of course they had to put that. Didn't even know Katniss was a plant.
Imagine if that woman is Katniss's grandmother.
Yeah. Well, of course, but then it's just like Star Wars, isn't it? Palpatine, raving Palpatine's granddaughter. I'm sorry, we're not having it. Somehow Snow has appeared. Yeah, none of that bullshit.
Did they mention at all in the film, like, how long the Hunger Games has been going on for?
I can't. I think so. They say it was like this is the 23rd Hunger Games or something.
Okay.
For example, 75th was Catching Fire, a quarter quell. So I think it'd been going on for maybe 23 years by that point, and the rebellion is still, maybe it's even less than that, because the rebellion is still fresh in people's minds. And the guy who came up with the idea of the Hunger Games is in it. He's played by Peter Dinklage in it. I can't remember. I still say it's worth a watch. I thought it was cool. And it makes me wonder, do you think there's much room for the Hunger Games to continue?
I think potentially, but I think it could then suffer from what Harry Potter did with like Fantastical Beasts was people came for Harry Potter, not for the added universe, and I think that's why now Warner Brothers are now going back to Harry
Just
Potter
remaking it as a TV show.
or even like Hogwarts. Like people went and read the books because of Harry Potter and the School of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And having like the Fantastical Beasts film was good, but the main drive of the film is Hogwarts. That's why they released the game, I think Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah.
And in 2023, it was the most bought game of that year.
Really?
Because
Wow.
people wanted to live out that Hogwarts fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think the issue you have is that if it's too far away from like the core elements of Hunger Games and also the characters who are involved in it, you could then get kind of like an issue of it's too far away from it, and I don't really see how this fits into what I love about Hunger Games and also the universe itself.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Ballad of Songbirds and Sake, watching the trailer for it, I felt like this is just how it presents it. Like a female tribune from District 12. It's like, what new is this going to introduce to the genre? It feels like there's either two issues they have when they keep expanding these universes. It's crap, and they just should have let it be rather than do the unnecessary sequel or the unnecessary prequel, or they're just gonna redo the same formula again, and it's like people have moved on and want something different, or it just feels cheap.
And I think that's why House of the Dragon was so successful, was that it had like things that we loved about Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like, we still saw like the houses, we were able to see the Baratheons, we were able to see the Hightowers, we were able to see the Targaryens, the Starks as well. And I think it kept its core element, and people always forget that the core element of Game of Thrones that made it so successful was politics.
And the
backside.
I mean, boys, the incest still there.
It definitely is. And like, the intrigue as well is like what brought people into the show, and I think that's why when you didn't really see the dragons that much, and you didn't really see the huge fight scenes that much earlier on in the series, it's like season 2 or season 3, people still loved it because it was like the intrigue, the backstabbing, like who can you trust, who can't you trust, and you had a central figure of the family of the Starks. And I think with House of the Dragon, you have, which they've done pretty well, is that it's kept those elements, that it's still the intrigue, it's still the backstabbing, it's still, as you said, the incense, and it still has the shock factor as well.
Yeah, I guess it's done well with keeping the elements going.
Oh, a bit of trivia from the Hunger Games, as we already touched on the elevator scene, which was very saucy. Apparently, for the first movie, there was a swear jar on set, and apparently Jennifer Lawrence has got such a potty mouth that she contributed half to the swear jar. Yeah, and you know what? That doesn't surprise me, because I think this was like Hunger Games is what propelled Jennifer Lawrence into this weird, crazy thing where every boy was obsessed with her for some reason. Oh, she's so hot. Oh my God, I love Jennifer Lawrence. So I think she's beautiful, but I wasn't like
thrown away.
Yeah, by that. But I remember one thing that came out in interviews, she's got quite a quirky personality. Like, I think she won an Oscar for something, and on her way up to get the Oscar, she tripped and fell. She didn't injure herself, but it just felt like, of all people, it would have been Jennifer Lawrence. So I think she really was a shining star in the show, and her acting seemed pretty good as well.
Yeah, and I think like she did do stuff like for X-Men. When they did the whole rebrand with Michael Fassbender,
First Class,
and James McAvoy as well. So like she was then the third biggest actress from there. And to your point, it was Hunger Games that really just threw her into like getting into those like Oscar-winning roles as well, and being like one of the biggest faces in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. It really put her out there. And again, another thing about her just being quirky. For the first movie, she was horsing around on set with Hutchinson, who plays Peter, and she accidentally kicked him in the head, knocking him out and giving him a concussion. Which is so symbolic of how Peter's actually feels like he's treated in the show, in the movies. So.
But the question is like you then think to yourself like, how were they like practicing like Jackie Chan karate kicks?
Well, I feel like I guess they were playing around on set, so I was just playing around and too bad. I mean, that's really awful. I mean, I've accidentally broken my brother's nose when we were horsing around when we were kids, but. Actually knock him out, giving him concussion, bloody hell.
Like now that it's common knowledge, like how does he live it down?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of adds the whole mystique behind it, really. And I guess, again, you could expect that from Jennifer Lawrence, right, of course. Another thing as well, when it came to kissing on set as well, apparently she'd always jokingly eat as much garlic and stuff as possible. Like, it's great. She's hilarious. She's got a wild personality. Mockingjay Part 2, the capital scenes were deliberately shot in Berlin and Paris, which makes so much sense to me, especially Paris as well. We're thinking of the French Revolution and everything. So, if you were a tribune in the Hunger Games, what weapon would you choose?
I think I would probably take the aspect, the guy who electrocuted everyone.
Like that one, yeah.
I would try and, because at least I've got a background in that, or potentially maybe weaponizing any form of like gas or liquid. Because I don't think because at least with that, you're at a distance. You can be like, I can execute this, I can be off somewhere else. But like being like face to face with someone with like a sword or an axe or a spear, you're then like potentially up to chance. Like whoever gets the first strike in, the first killing blow, then you're at a constant disadvantage.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess you'd have to set it up. And, at the start of the game, everyone sprints for the weapons.
The resources, You'd
have to, probably pull back and hide for a bit and then sneak in at the right time, which is, I think, what they do in the second Hunger Games in Catching Fire. I think for me, if I was going to choose a weapon, obviously I'd choose a big-ass machine gun, but I'm sure you're not allowed that in the games. I actually think a bow and arrow is probably the best choice based on what you're allowed to choose, a bow and arrow or crossbow, because having a ranged weapon just puts everything else to shame as long as you can not get snuck up on.
But also I think the crossbow would be the best because crossbows are easier to aim, but the only issue with the crossbow, it takes longer to load. Yeah,
well, that's why I'll just quickly grab it. At the start of the game, would you wait for everyone to get the stuff and then hang back and hide a bit?
I would hang back and hide, because if you trip and stumble, it's all over.
Someone just come and stab you in the back, Yeah,
the best thing is to just run in the opposite direction as fast as you can, and then try and find a place where you can actually hide. And I think
pretend you're the weakest as well. I think that's what I would do. Just pretend you're pathetic and helpless, and then at a moment's notice just sneak behind them and get them in their sleep. I think that's what I'd do. So they got to sleep sometime. I won't sleep at all. It'd be pretty crazy if you could introduce some hazards into the Hunger Games field or the arena that they play in. What would you introduce in?
I think mine would be more like weather based.
So just rain on them all the time. That's depressing.
No, I'm thinking like full on like hurricane.
Oh geez.
So like if you're stuck on the fringes and the edges and you think you're fine, we then notify you that there's a hurricane path and it's going to go through the whole map.
Yeah.
And then not tell you the direction it's coming from. So therefore you'll always be on edge. And then thinking, has it passed or is it going to actually hit into me?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that's pretty cool. I think I would have one of my hazards would be like Spice Girls on repeat, 24 hours in one section of the Colosseum. Something that would just drive them insane, but in a very delicate way. And it would be entertaining for the audience as well. It's nothing, something the kids can watch without being too graphic, as opposed to like radioactive monkeys that'll tear your face off. Like, damn. Okay, in terms of style, which district would you rather be the tribune for and therefore have a cool, stylish outfit for your parade?
It's less focused on style, but I think it would be like one of the lower numbers, just because like the likelihood of surviving and not dying is at its highest. Because I think I know that 1 and 2 are more favoured, and I think further and further down the line you get to. But I would say it would probably be 2.
Yeah, that's District 12. You're kind of on your own, really. Yeah. I would probably go with the lumber one, just because I think just wearing an outfit as a tree would just be hilarious. Like, literally just nothing fun or cool about it. It's just a tree, just a stump of wood. That would be excellent. Okay, and if you had to choose a colour rose, what colour rose would you choose?
I'll probably pick black.
Yeah, me too. I was going to say that. I think a black rose is like something
you give
beautiful
to someone just before you plan to kill them.
Yeah, exactly, like a mafia symbol, isn't it? The last kiss of death, yeah. I send my regards. Is there anything summarising up or anything finer you'd want to say about the Hunger Games series?
I think like during that period you had like other book series and films, like you had like Divergent, you had like Maze Runner, and I think you also had, I think there was a film where you had cities that were on like wheels and they were going around the world and they were fighting for resources.
Oh, right.
And they would fight each other.
Anime or something?
No, it was an actual like, you can't really say live action because it was so much the CGI. It was like a dystopian world where cities would then basically attack each other and they'd basically be on like humongous wheels and they were fighting for dominance. So then you would have, for example, Berlin would then attack London and take all of London's resources and kill all its people so they could continue to survive. Yeah. I think from all those book series, I think Hunger Games stands out so much because it's not just the violence or even just the shock factor, because all of them have their own individual shock factors. Yeah. But it's also, I think, the psychology of it all, that it's literally people are seeing this as a way of enjoyment. And then I think we also just realized that, people also did see it this way 2,000
the
years
Roman
ago.
times and stuff. Yeah. I know, it's crazy. And I think there's a very strong message about the dangers of reality TV and that society still gets this need for reality TV. Obviously, with our laws, we won't have people killing each other, but there's that possibility there. And it has been there historically, and it could happen again in the future, but I think we're a long way off something like that. But all we need is like a nuclear holocaust, and the survivors like, okay, time for the Hunger Games.
But what some people are saying that is weird that could come in is like, you know how AI is like being such a discussed topic now? People are saying, what if we were to then do Hunger Games, but it was AI, so no one was hurt, but people could then see that as a form of sport. Like, those films where they have like robots that literally fight to the death. Yeah. And like futuristic worlds. I think they have it like in Star Wars as well. They've got like different aspects there that some people believe in the future will have AI and like AI like augmented realities where people would then fight to the death, but it wouldn't actually happen in real life. And that would be the excuse to say, well, we can have this much violence because it's not hurting anyone.
You know what? I think so. I think, for example, fireworks, they're now moving away from fireworks displays because, one, they're really bad for the environment. Two, noise pollution, and just general pollution. But it also, people with pets as well. More people own dogs now after pandemic, and they just hate it as sort of cats. So now they're moving to using drones. And I saw I think in was it Shanghai in China? They had like a drone New Year's Eve display, and it looked excellent, you know, and you could make so many shapes with it and move it around. I even saw like a Star Wars convention. They had loads of drones and made like Darth Vader in the sky. So I think it's the principle's similar with this AI thing. You could actually have some AI generate. I mean, is the Hunger Games not like, you know, the theatre? This is why we have the theatre, but I guess you could have all animated stuff as well, like Call of Duty Warzone, for example. It's a video game, but that's it's got to appeal those sort of battle royale games. You had PUBG, you had Fortnite. So I think people do enjoy it, and I think AI generated will help us have this in the future. Perhaps it might make big games out of it, but then the issue is predictability, and people might try and influence the software engineering team to like if people are betting on it as well, there could be some more issues there. But I think all of that pales in comparison to actually like putting real kids in there and watching them kill each other. So I think it's still okay with the AI thing. So that's all we have time for this round, folks. We've done Twilight, we've done Hunger Games. We're going to take a little break from our Teenage Dreams sort of series. This is totally not something we planned. It just happened. But we're going to be talking about House of the Dragon, which is now on tonight. Yes. The very night we speak, I'm going to get out of here, have a drink, and then watch House of the Dragon. I don't care. So we'll do an episode on that very soon. We've also got Rings of Power coming up again, because again they had to do it at the same time. Which did not help them first time, juxtaposition and all. What else have we got? There's a lot out at about the boys.
Then you've got like Acolyte with Star Wars.
The Acolyte, I lost my Disney Plus subscription, well, my brother's Disney Plus subscription, so I need to find a way of watching that. But also I actually can't watch House of the Dragon. I need to message a friend who I know has got Now TV. But there's a lot on, so you'll be hearing a lot from us, that's for sure. And Josh, you have a bit of an announcement as well.
Just with work, I've got a 3-month secondment, so I'll be out in Saudi Arabia working there for a minimum of 3 months. So then we'll be able to then take the Two Maesters on the road. But thankfully, one of the nice things is that the working hours is like from 7 till 4 p.m. their time, which will mean I'll always finish work at like 2 o'clock. So I'd always have my evenings to do the recordings. Which
I always finish here at like 4:30, so we can just record immediately after work. So that way you don't have to stay up till late and stuff. But we'll be like the old days, you know, like we did with House of the Dragon starting up. Coincidence? I think not. Well, again, if you love us, click the notification button, give us a like, share us to a friend, and if you really love us, send us some money, because we like money. Check out our Patreon page. All right, folks, you've been listening to the Two Maesters. See you again soon.
See you, folks.
May the odds forever be in your favour. Totally forgot about that one.